Welcome back to yet another FPL video and podcast. This will be the team selection for Gameweek 14, and there is a quick turnaround between deadlines. We've got another one on Tuesday, and if you play UCL Fantasy, it's going to be even more hectic for you as well. And the plan is to get all the content out, which I usually do for both fantasy formats, and keep your eyes peeled for all those pieces of content by smashing the like button and subscribing if you're new. Our aim is to get this to over 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards 31,000 subscribers. We just hit 30k in the recent deadline stream, and I'm looking to give 10 memberships in the upcoming deadline stream on Tuesday. So be sure not to miss it by also hitting the notification bell and follow me on Twitter and Instagram, the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound. All those links are in the description, and I'd highly recommend that you check all of them out. Let's get straight into this though with my Gameweek 13 review and my transfer plans, and I've taken a -4 hit already with very early moves, which I don't suggest for most people. My goalkeeper picks have been dreadful this season in UCL Fantasy and FPL. I must have gotten 4 returns, and that included a limitless chip usage in UCL Fantasy, but ever since I bought Raya in Gameweek 6, only the one clean sheet, which came against Nottingham Forest in Gameweek 12. Arsenal were 4-0 up against West Ham and conceded twice in the space of a couple of minutes. I think they need to fine-tune some things defensively. They also conceded to Sporting, but the form is definitely back on track. Arsenal playing some fluid football and really punishing teams offensively, and if they can also find that balance and defend at all times and maintain the concentration, I think they can go on a similar run to what they did last season. Going into Gameweek 13, I already knew I needed to reinforce my defensive line, and Aït-Nouri delivered 0 points against Bournemouth with 4 goals conceded, but thankfully no yellow card just yet, and the kind of aim and hope is that he gets it when the fixtures turn for the worse around Gameweek 18 for Wolves, because the next 4 fixtures are brilliant on paper, but then it turns very sour, thick and fast, and that's where the likes of Aït-Nouri and possibly Strand Larsen and Cunha could become sells. But before then, I think Aït-Nouri is still worth holding on to, and there aren't many standout defenders at a similar price point, especially with his goals and assist potential, which hopefully he can demonstrate in the next couple of weeks. My second option, though, certainly did that in Gameweek 13. Gabriel scored and assisted against West Ham. He is such a menace from set pieces. That's 3 goals at the London Stadium now throughout his career, and he won a penalty when Fabianski just took him out. That was a blatant penalty, unlike the first one that Arsenal earned, but I think Gabriel is just a great option here. Arguably the best defender in FPL alongside Virgil van Dijk, but you could certainly make a case either way, and you've got cheaper alternatives with both Arsenal and Liverpool. Joe Gomez could be worth a punt at 4.8 million. You've also got Jurriën Timber, who looks very dynamic as the right back, not to mention Calafiori and Saliba, and Raya in goal. I think a defensive double up in Arsenal is worthwhile, but Liverpool have the better defence at this moment in time, and if I was wildcarding, I would consider that possibility instead, unless Arsenal can really get going defensively and also add that with the clean sheets on top of their big wins and performances. But the third and final defender was Van den Berg, who came off my bench for the injured Veltman. That was a last-minute transfer that didn't go well for me whatsoever, and let's see if Joel Veltman is available for Gameweek 14 and beyond. So even with that defender transfer, I've made things worse with my defensive line. At least Rico Lewis is fit and available to start against Nottingham Forest, and maybe City will start their run just like Arsenal did against the same opposition. But let's not talk about that too much and focus on the positives, and I had a lot of them in the midfield. It was almost a clean sweep in this position, but Bruno Fernandes delivered 2 assists and 9 points overall against Everton. He has a great record against the Toffees, but no bonus points to show for it. It was Rashford and Xerxes stealing the show, and I still like Fernandes with this deeper position and role that he's playing under Ruben Amorim, but that could certainly change very quickly, and his goals and assist record since Ten Hag was sacked has been incredible, especially when Ruud van Nistelrooy was the interim manager, and I think he's worth holding in many scenarios. But a bit of a spoiler alert, I have sold Bruno Fernandes already, and that's why you don't make rage transfers. I would not recommend it to anybody really. I don't think it's worth it in most cases. But my second option in the midfield was a certain Cole Palmer, who got 14 points. He's back on track now, and a lot of his returns have come in specific games against Brighton, Wolves, and now Aston Villa, but he's got that high ceiling which makes him an excellent captaincy option in certain game weeks, and against Southampton away, he might be the most popular option of them all, even over Mohamed Salah, who is another one who delivered yet another double-digit return, 9, 10-plus pointers out of 13 game weeks. It is simply ridiculous. Salah won't keep this up. There will be a drop off eventually like we saw with Erling Haaland, but to the same extent, probably not. And Liverpool are flying at the top of the Premier League table, and Salah just finds a way to get those goals and assists combined in most game weeks. Only Bukayo Saka has really matched him in that regard, but Salah is clear at the moment in terms of FPL points scored, and he's still got good fixtures coming up. But Newcastle and Tottenham away over the next 4 game weeks might mean people gravitate towards different captaincy options, but you can still go for Salah and get some healthy returns in the process. My final midfielder was the only one to blank in Bryan Mbeumo. Based on the FPL rules, he should have been awarded the assist, but he wasn't. I'm not sure exactly why that was the case. They originally added the assist to Mbeumo, but then took it away. So, yeah, it's just not going to happen. They're not going to add the points. Either way, though, Mbeumo will be sold in masses. He's currently the most sold player heading into Game Week 14, but my plan is to actually keep him, and maybe that is to the detriment of my FPL team, and I made a mistake with the choice of midfielder I've sold. But we'll talk about that in the transfer plan section. For now, though, very good returns from Fernandes, Palmer and Salah. All 3 of them should be considered on your wildcards, or if you're building an optimal midfield over the Christmas period. I'm missing a certain Bukayo Saka at the moment, but let's talk about the forward line, which has resulted in some frustration. The best transfer I've made this season is a certain Matheus Cunha. He blanked against Bournemouth, but you can forgive him for that because of the big returns he got in previous game weeks with some massive hauls as well. So I don't think Cunha is really a source of frustration for me personally, and the same goes for my best pick since Game Week 1 in Chris Wood. Another goal and maximum bonus points against Ipswich Town, but the fixtures turn sour now, and Nottingham Forest are bottom of the fixture difficulty rating until Game Week 18. You could still make a case for keeping Chris Wood in that time frame, but he will become benchable in a lot of these upcoming game weeks. But the main source of aggravation is a certain Isak, who picked up an injury against Crystal Palace, and the fact that I took a -4 hit for Bruno Fernandes and Isak last week has actually cost me around 30 to 40 points, because I could have just bought Saka in for Phil Foden and not taken a hit, and that would have resulted in at least 30 points gained, around that anyway, because Bruno Fernandes delivered 9 points at least against Everton. So Isak has been one of my worst transfers in recent weeks, and my recent run in UCL Fantasy and FPL hasn't been good whatsoever. In Game Week 13, I scored 76 points, which has resulted in another green arrow, so I'm now up to 509k, so it's not too shabby. The captaincy was also quite decent, with Mohamed Salah delivering 13 points overall and 26 with the double points, so it's not that bad, isn't it? When I'm talking about recent weeks not really going to plan, it's more so my transfers, buying Veltman just for him to be out of the squad and injured, buying Fernandes and Isak instead of just buying Saka, and in UCL Fantasy it's been the same thing. But despite all of that, I have been getting green arrows in both fantasy formats, so it's not all doom and gloom, and I've got a decent foundation going into Game Week 14, but only one free transfer, and I have made 2 moves already for a -4 hit. So let's delve into that straight away. I'm definitely not making a goalkeeper transfer, I'll tell you that now, but maybe in a couple of weeks if Arsenal don't improve defensively, I might even do wholesale changes at the back. It's not an ideal fixture on paper, and I personally think Arsenal will concede, but David Raya is my only option. I don't even have Fabianski on the bench facing Leicester away. That could have been an option for me to maybe consider going a bit different, but I'm going to stick with David Raya for now. I believe the best goalkeeper in FPL would be Robert Sanchez from Game Week 14 onwards, but you also have Verbruggen, Alisson when he's back from injury, and Onana. David Raya would probably be third in that list at the moment behind Robert Sanchez and arguably Verbruggen in terms of value, but I think Arsenal have one of the best defences in the Premier League. They're yet to show it in the last 2 months, but they can get back on track with the clean sheets, and maybe Manchester United at home could be another one for the Gunners. Not for the first time this season, my defensive line doesn't look great. I've got Nuri away from home against Everton, but the Toffees have struggled to score in recent matches. They failed to score against Man United in Game Week 13 and in a goalless draw against West Ham only a couple of weeks ago. And Wolves have the better of Everton in recent meetings, even at Goodison Park. So Nuri could maybe get a clean sheet and add an attack in return. That could make for a massive haul. And I certainly wouldn't recommend selling the Algerian before Game Week 18. But once we reach that stage when Wolves' fixtures turn for the worse, I think Nuri is definitely disposable, and the same can be said for most Wolves assets, with the exception of Matheus Cunha. My second option in this defensive line is Gabriel, so an Arsenal defensive double-up against their fierce rivals Manchester United, who just won 4-0, and Ruben Amorim could actually spark a very big comeback in the Premier League table, and United could compete for fourth spot. It's very tight in certain positions so far this season, and there will be a bigger gap, just like in FPL, in terms of ranks and league positions, but I still think United are going to be a tough opponent for Arsenal here, and I think Arsenal will concede. Let's see how that goes. Gabriel, though, is definitely one to start week in, week out, because he can score or assist in any given game. He's done it at Anfield, at the Etihad, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Stamford Bridge, you name it. At the Emirates, he's done it on multiple occasions, and now it's another chance to score against Man United, and that's kind of the biggest prospect of a return from Gabriel Magalhaes. Let's see if he is available. I personally think he will be. I covered his injury in the Transfers podcast with Arteta's recent comments and also all the local reports, so be sure to check that out. The same goes for Isak, amongst other injury doubts. But the third and final defender is Mykolenko, so I've got two from the same game here, but it's not as bad as it looks, because even though I've got Mateus Cunha, I don't have an Everton attacker to face Aït-Nouri, so I think having Mykolenko and Aït-Nouri isn't the worst thing in the world, and they both can produce a clean sheet in the same game. I saw it only a couple of weeks ago with Mykolenko and Van den Berg, both of them on my bench, and they both delivered a clean sheet. So we'll wait and see what we have in store for us with this game. I think Wolves might actually get the victory here, and I don't expect much from Mykolenko, but my alternatives are Van den Berg and the injured Veltman, who might not even make it against Fulham. So it's not looking too good with my defensive line, despite making a transfer in Game Week 13 to bolster that position. That hasn't really worked out just yet. The hope is that Veltman is available very soon, and I can maybe gain some clean sheets and points over the next couple of game weeks, with Brighton having plum fixtures until Game Week 18. It's not terrible for Game Week 14, in my opinion, this defensive line, but it still needs bolstering in the coming weeks, and that's where the likes of Joe Gomez, Virgil van Dijk, and all the other defenders I've covered in recent wildcard and Transfers podcasts could come in. I'm hoping for more of the same from my midfield that I saw in Game Week 13. Mohamed Salah facing Newcastle away. I still think he can deliver a big return at St James's Park. I believe he got an assist last season when Darwin Núñez came off the bench and was the hero, and I think Liverpool get the job done. They might struggle a little bit in certain patches. No Konate. Let's see if Isak is available or not. I think he'll be back in the Newcastle team very soon. If not the Liverpool game, it will be shortly afterwards. That could play a big part in the outcome of this game, but I think Liverpool have the better team. They're in great form at the moment. Only dropped points in 2 matches in the Premier League this season. They're at a 100% win record in the cup competition so far, and there will be a blip at some stage, but I think Arne Slot has done an incredible job. The tactics are spot on. Liverpool look solid defensively. They create a lot of chances, and there was a discussion at the beginning of the season about Salah being too wide and playing more of a creative role, and Diaz would be the kind of go-to FPL asset. Well, look what's happened since Game Week 5. That has been far from the truth, and that's why you can't judge too much about certain players, and even if they maybe don't deliver in certain game weeks, you've got to be patient. I wasn't with Salah earlier this season, and I was punished as a result. My second midfielder, though, is going to be a certain Semenyo facing Tottenham at home. Back from suspension, I believe he'll return to the Bournemouth lineup despite their 4 goals against Wolves, and I think Semenyo is a decent budget midfielder. Not amazing. I don't think it's a clear standout at his price and below, and if you can stretch to Mitoma, I would rather go for the Japanese international, and you've also got Kudus and Jarrod Bowen at more expensive price tags as well, especially in the case of Jarrod Bowen. Kudus would actually be a very good option at 6.2 million, but I like Semenyo against Tottenham, and in future game weeks facing Ipswich Town away, West Ham at home, and even Man United. It's not terrible, and Bournemouth have good fixtures until Game Week 18, just like Brighton, but let's complete this midfield with some big assets. Bukayo Saka is one of my transfers in. I bought him for Bruno Fernandes. Maybe you could argue I should have sold Mbeumo instead and kept Bruno Fernandes. That's definitely a viable suggestion, and I just made rage transfers. I'll be the first to admit it. Let's see how it all goes. Bruno Fernandes did well for me in Game Week 13, but it would have been even better if I just bought Saka in the first place, and over the coming weeks I will be eyeing up replacements for Bryan Mbeumo, but I've got a sneaky feeling he could do something against Aston Villa and Newcastle, and that's why he remains in my team despite some poor performances recently, not getting any goals or assists, also limited shots and XG, and not creating that many chances as well. So it's not looking good for Bryan Mbeumo. It was Schade who scored the hat-trick in Game Week 13, and Wissa scored yet again and got bonus points. Ever since Wissa has returned, it has resulted in a downturn in form for Bryan Mbeumo and a bit of a different role, but I still think he's got something up his sleeve in the coming weeks, and I do like the fact that a lot of people are selling him. I do like it when Mbeumo has relatively low ownership, but it's still quite high at around 30% at the time of this recording. But the fifth and final midfielder is Cole Palmer, arguably the best of the lot, facing Southampton away. They're missing several key players like Tyler Dibbling and Harwood Bellis, so they are there for the taking despite their 1-1 draw against Brighton in the first game of Gameweek 13. And Cole Palmer got a goal and an assist against Aston Villa. Chelsea sit third in the Premier League table behind Arsenal despite having the same goals scored, goals conceded, and also points on the board. I think Chelsea could go on a great run until January. I'm back to a 3-5-2 formation this week with Matheus Cunha facing Everton away. It's not the best fixture in the world, with Everton having quite a few clean sheets in recent weeks, but conceding 4 goals to Man United, that will ring some alarm bells, and Everton are always kind of flirting with relegation. The same goes for Wolves this season, but Cunha is someone you want to start week in, week out. He delivered 2 goals and an assist against Fulham very recently, and he can do it against the best teams in the country, let alone Everton, who can be brilliant on their day defensively, but they can also leave a lot to be desired. They are a very inconsistent team, and Cunha could capitalise, especially given their record against Everton in recent meetings. But the final player is Joao Pedro, and the second transfer in for a -4 hit. I sold Isak. Once again, you could point towards selling Chris Wood instead of Isak. That could have been even better, and I believe the Swedish international will be available in either Gameweek 14 or 15. The injury doesn't seem too serious, as I discussed in recent podcasts, but Joao Pedro remains a brilliant option up front, and I haven't really changed my mind about the best forwards in FPL. For the last couple of weeks, I've mentioned Cunha, Joao Pedro, Isak, and Nicholas Jackson as the best strikers in Fantasy Premier League. Admittedly, the bench doesn't look good at all for Gameweek 14. I've got Valdemarson, Chris Wood, Veltman, and Van den Berg. The only contentious call is not starting the New Zealand striker because he's been brilliant this season, and with Manchester City's form, winless in 7 games across all competitions, they are there for the taking, and I think the way Forest play could be perfect to capitalise on Man City's weaknesses in the transition, and they aren't controlling games as they used to. So with Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, having Gibbs White potentially back and Chris Wood, if he gets the service, I think Forest can cause a lot of problems there, but I still think City will get the job done and win, and I'm probably backing Chris Wood to blank, but I could be wrong about that, and he has proven a lot of people wrong so far this season. But let's look at the captaincy, which is very interesting in Gameweek 14. I'm going to go for Cole Palmer at the moment. He has been my boss captain since the Friday deadline, and Salah is the vice, but other options I'm considering include Saka and potentially Matheus Cunha. They are also under consideration for me, but it's between Salah and Palmer really, and I'm going to go for the Southampton away fixture with their absentees, and I think Cole Palmer will go on a brilliant run, which will also help Chelsea rise the Premier League table, potentially to second very soon, and like I said, their CO Green in the fixture difficulty rating is actually very impressive until January, arguably February as well, so I think Palmer is definitely worth going for. It's just a shame he got so many points against Aston Villa, because now he's going to be the template captain with that plum game against Southampton away, but it's not locked in for me. The same goes for my bench. Chris Wood could still find a way into the starting 11, and if I get another defender injury, or let's say Gabriel and Veltman are ruled out just before the deadline, I might be forced to take a -8 hit and really focus on my defensive line. And I was tempted to buy Jarrod Bowen, and it would have been in Boomer making way. I feel it's not worth it though, and I am back in the Cameroonian to get some returns when most people have lost faith with the Brentford talisman. So that is my starting 11 as things stand following the -4 hit, and the captaincy and the vice have all been discussed. But let's head over to other websites like Drafthound and FPL.team to visualize future game weeks and see what they're suggesting for my transfers. You know the drill by now. Check out the link in the description below for Drafthound. It's a great resource I've been using for over a year, and it's very fun to use, particularly the player rankings. That's my favourite tool of them all. They recommend 8 Nuri or Veltman out to Pedro Porro, also buying Wan-Bissaka for Van den Berg, or getting Mitoma for Semenyo. But let's actually replicate my transfers that I've already made into this website and show you how easy it is to use. So let's buy Saka for Bruno Fernandes, and also Joao Pedro in for Isak. Both of them are actually near the top of the player rankings for the next 3 game weeks in terms of predicted points. So let's now check their suggestions for the starting 11 and the captaincy. So they've actually gone for Salah captain and Palmer as the vice, and they've put Chris Wood, Veltman and Van den Berg in the same order that I have. So I'm actually in agreement with them, except for the captaincy, where it's also very close, to be quite honest with you. Salah has been the best FPL asset, and Palmer has been lacking somewhat in recent weeks, but I think that goal and assist against Aston Villa will restore confidence of many FPL managers. The expected points is 66, and even the expected minutes is 74, and the average ownership has actually crept up a little bit in recent weeks to 23%, so hopefully I can start making some more differential moves and get that percentage down a little bit, but it's not that important in the grand scheme of things, and I might need to make even more transfers, as discussed before, with the defensive line, and maybe Brian Mbeumo if he continues to frustrate owners. But let's now go to FPL.team and visualize future game weeks. It's a free website and highly worth the time and effort. This will be a sneak preview of Game Week 15, assuming that I don't need to make any more transfers and most of my players are available. So Raya in goal, Veltman, Gabriel and Aït-Nouri would be not a great defensive line, but also not the worst you'll ever see. Mbeumo, Saka, Palmer, Salah and Semenyo is a decent midfield 5, especially with the big 3 of Saka, Palmer and Salah. They go without saying. Joao Pedro and Cunha up front, so pretty much identical to my Game Week 14 squad, but the only difference in the starting 11 would be Veltman over Mykolenko. And if you look at Everton's fixtures from Game Week 15 onwards, they face Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal and Chelsea back-to-back. He would be a sell from Game Week 15 onwards. Van den Berg already has poor fixtures. He'll be another one to possibly upgrade, and if Veltman isn't available very soon, he could be another one on the chopping block, despite the fact I just bought him on Friday. And Aït-Nouri would be a sell around Game Week 18 or 19, unless Wolves show a lot of improvement and they can be competitive against the better teams in the country, let alone Mbeumo and maybe Semenyo. There's a lot of things that could be wrong with my FPL squad. It's not terrible, but they're definitely worth highlighting as possible moves in the future and also room for improvement, and I think it really comes down to my defense. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. I promise to get this to 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 31k and beyond. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, as well as Spotify. Leave a 5-star review and follow me on Spotify. It goes a long way to support my channel. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 14 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.